All right, everyone, from my philosophy 1113 class, this recording will be covering some of the ways of looking at the influence of the ancient Greeks in philosophy. Well, we can see in some ways the influence of the ancient Greeks by looking at some of the conversations and lectures that have been recorded and preserved in different formats in their education system, where rhetoric and different forms of communication and logic were very important in the traditional education system. And then also just in some of their conversations that would have taken place when they would gather in what was referred to as a symposium, which would be really loosely interpreted as a drinking game. And this is looking at well-to-do Greek men would be able to do this. There would be other forms of entertainment, but there would also then be times for very important conversation and exchange of ideas while they were drinking. So, and they would, maybe you're aware of this, they would lay on their side to eat and to drink the wine. Kind of an interesting way to eat and drink. So you can see that they would, and in some cases, part of the game might be that they would get these crushed grapes, very fresh wine, and they would flick that back into a pot. You can see that one individual attempting to do that there. So again, in those conversations, what is, just like we had here in our class, or maybe think about that. What is a just society? What is real? You can see that we've had those kinds of conversations. And so here we could say, maybe they would also ask, are the gods real? That might be a tough question to ask, but certainly that question was asked, and that was something we'll come back to when we look at the trial of Socrates. Should we, if you were sitting there and heard someone say that, should we listen to all the oracles that are communicating from the gods? Some of those types of questions that might be raised. So let's look at that religious system in ancient Greece. So it was a polytheistic religion, meaning many gods. So in a way, think of the contrast there to three of the best known monotheistic religions. So monotheistic meaning one God. So Judaism, Christianity, Islam. All three of those religions that really dominate the world are a belief in one God, and only one God, and one God that has complete authority. So these gods had a lot of power, but they would in some ways be in conflict with one another, and they could specialize in certain areas. And so that would be the reason why people would communicate with these particular gods. The oracle that I referenced would be an individual who is hearing from the god. And so people may go to a particular temple and give some sort of sacrifice, pay some sort of homage, and then the oracle may receive a message from that god. So we can see here this question of maintaining a society in this traditional way of living, or to have other individuals question, should this continue, and should there be a different way of behaving and a different way of finding our truth? Is it through the gods, or should it be some other method? So let's look at these gods. So really, this is just for your own information. I'm not going to go into detail about a particular test or anything. We will again come back to this in some ways by looking at the other well-known Greek philosophers that we'll mention in other situations in this class, Socrates, Plato, and Aristotle. So when we look here, we can see that there were known as 12 main gods and goddesses. So I do think that's interesting. But these three brothers are the ones, they defeated their father, and then they were able to divide up areas of influence around in the whole scheme of the universe, really. So Lord of the Sky, supreme leader Zeus; Poseidon, his brother, Lord of the Sea; Hades, Lord of the underworld. And we can certainly see ways in which these gods have influence in popular culture. Think of superheroes or Harry Potter or other kinds of areas of literature. And we also have Hera, the wife of Zeus, and she's the goddess of married women. So again, think about specialization, where you would go to a particular temple for some type of answer, satisfaction, help in some ways. Athena, goddess of civilized life and agriculture. She was the goddess of the city of Athens, Zeus's daughter. And here we can see some questions of faith, right? So, that's something that can't be proven, faith. So do you believe, if you were back 2,500 years ago, living in a city-state in Greece, would you believe that Athena, as a full-grown woman, wearing her armor, popped out of Zeus's forehead, which was the belief? Do you believe that's true? That's how she started to live. Very popular god was Apollo, the god of light and the god of truth. He was what people would try to aspire to, because Apollo was just so awesome. So he was a very, very likable god. Although, he was not a party animal kind of guy by any means. He was very serious. Artemis, the goddess of wild things, the huntress. So we can see, if you're out in the forest, how you might be then hoping that Artemis is going to help you out. Aphrodite, the goddess of love. Hermes, Zeus's messenger, so the god of commerce in the market. We can see how that would be important. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, you've heard other names, and so the Romans took over many of these gods and goddesses, but they did give them different names. So Hermes is Mercury, and that's probably how many of you may know that. I believe Artemis is Diana in the Roman religion. Not a popular god, but one that certainly people would pay homage to because it is so important. Ares, the god of war. What is a very popular god is Hephaestus, the god of fire. And he was one of the very popular gods in that case. It's interesting to think about that people would have that kind of relationship, that they would almost view them like superheroes and almost like their friends in some cases, right? So they would like some gods and they wouldn't like others. And certainly partly is what they represent, but also what they contribute to the humans. And also an attitude that maybe some of these gods like the humans more than others. And then Hestasia, the goddess of the hearth and the home. So we can see how important that would be. There are many other gods. There are gods for all kinds of things. And so these are just some of the better known gods and goddesses. So for us here is to think of, and we'll have some opportunities for discussion on this. I think this is important to consider this contrast. So think about a society then like this. The Greeks explained their world by the action of the gods. So a very brief description there of how this religion would work. And, I think we have to consider that even if you're not active in a religion, you can see how religion impacts your culture. So even if you were an individual 2,500 years ago in a Greek city-state, and you weren't really that interested in the religion, and maybe you didn't really, want to go to the temple and pay homage to a particular god and participate in the sacrifices or other kinds of events throughout the year, Well, your friends and neighbors did. And so it's still going to influence you then. If you have most people believing, well, Zeus is mad and that's why these things happened, whether you believe that or not, you're going to be caught up into that energy. You're going to be caught up into that orbit. And so it's going to have an impact on society. So consider, write down in your notes first, and then maybe share, we have an opportunity to share with your groups and or perhaps the whole class, what that society might be like. What might a society be like in which the actions that take place, the world is explained by the actions of the gods? So here we can see at least a possible, well, no doubt, an emerging division that's occurring here. That if you have philosophy on one side, and then you have this traditional religion, it may not necessarily always mix. Philosophy, the love of wisdom, good judgment. Is there a way in which you can say this may not fit with all descriptions of the activities, try to explain these activities by the actions of the gods? Maybe there's something else that we need to be seeking, some other type of process beyond just the actions of the gods. And someone else should be able to reach those conclusions. And that really becomes a beginning point of philosophy, to see where to separate from this very traditional religion. All right, very good. Our next recording will go into some more details from chapter 1 in the Palmer text, and we'll also start to talk more about the life of Socrates.